Big hockey news out of Calgary today. Flames announcing they fired head coach Glen Gulutzan, as well as assistants Dave Cameron and Paul Gerard. The Flames had high expectations heading into this season, as we all know. They didn't meet them, finishing 11 points out of a playoff spot. Today, GM Brad Treliving said there's plenty of blame to go around.
Starts with myself, player decisions, personnel decisions. You go into the players' performance, who played well, who didn't, and why. So ultimately, I mean, you are what your record says you are. But I felt in order to get our team to the level it needs to get to, and each individual to the level it needs to get to, that we had to make this decision. This starts our off season. I don't absolve anybody from where we are. This doesn't necessarily mean we won't look at other changes. We've got a lot of work to do on a roster, but felt that we had to, and concluded that we had to make this decision.
There were whispers, Tim, and even with like 2 weeks to go in the regular season when it looked like a fait accompli.
Yeah.
But we're here now. Are you surprised by this move by the Flames?
Surprised, maybe a little bit shocked, no. I think when you win just 2 of your last 11 games and go out the way they did, and we know there was extenuating circumstances. Sean Monahan was a little more beat up than we had been led to believe. This team simply did not perform to expectations. That's the bottom line. And maybe the most, you didn't really say it in this press conference today. We were watching a bit of the Jays game, flipping back and forth, but I will never forget when Brad Treliving went out and said that this team lacked the emotional investment to be a playoff team. To me, that is the greatest indictment of any hockey. Like in hockey culture, to say that you lack the emotional investment, now that falls on coaches, that falls on players, and if people are searching for blame or spray here, sure, you could give it to Glen Gulutzan, but Brad Treliving's not done here. Like, he is not done. No. He knows that this team needs a little bit of a facelift, and when he said that they lack the emotional investment to be a playoff team, that means there are going to be other changes on this team because, let's be honest, they didn't have secondary scoring. When Mike Smith went out, they didn't have a goalie that could carry the load in any way, shape, or form. Like, there were a lot of flaws on this team, but that indictment to me says a lot when you say that the emotional investment's not there.
I think if you're not going to make the postseason in a year where you've traded first-round picks and you've made investments in certain areas, and Mike Smith's not getting any younger, the throwing stick stuff maybe wears a little thin. I'll be honest with you, and I think that maybe played a bit of a role here. But I want to take a step back because Gulutzan has a year left on his contract. He's going to be fine. He will coach again in this league, at least at an assistant level. He's a respected mind. And again, just to throw it out there, Tim, just in terms of who the person is, let's not forget, he and Todd McClellan, like that on the Saturday after Humboldt, they're in the Saskatoon hospital, and they're helping out. They didn't do it for the cameras. They didn't do it. They wanted to be there and help out because it meant that, like, so with all this going on, you know, Glen's got a feeling what might happen here.
Right.
He still got on a plane and went back to Saskatoon very quickly with this professional situation percolating. So I want to acknowledge that because they did go. Where do you go with the roster? Someone explain to me, because I'm very glad we ran the Brad stuff. I like Brad a lot. Where do you go with the roster? They had one of the worst power plays in the game this year. They had one of the worst offenses in the game this year, and they mailed it in at home 2 out of every 4 nights. That was basically how the season played out. You're going to play Michael Backlund now $5+ million for an extended period of time. You have your first line. Troy Brower's making $4.5 for what? Those second line, third line wingers, third line center, you need to hit on some lottery tickets here this offseason.
Especially if you're not bringing kids in the new salary cap era because you don't have any draft picks.
And their system, when I hear about the top systems in hockey, I don't hear Calgary. And you said it yesterday in terms of hybrid players. And I said, well, you got to find some hybrid players. We're talking about, I forget who we were talking about.
It was Matt Martin and the toughness and the pushback, and they got a little bit of that in Tkachuk.
Your point was they're hard to find.
They are hard to find, yeah.
Better believe they're hard to find. So, listen, as disappointing as this season was for Calgary, Glen Gulutzan does not eat it on his own. And I know Brad was saying that today, but today's about Glen. Today it looks like Glen eats it. And I want to defend Glenn a little bit because it wasn't just him. If Johnny Gaudreau is one of the best players in hockey or wants to be paid like it, if Sean Monahan is a top-line center, Brad Treliving's going to get really, really aggressive in the market. Some of this has got to hit, and it can't be on Glenn. And I feel for Glenn because at some point, you can't run a power play for the guys. Right. You can't be your top-line center.
But what's the difference between, and I know they got swept by Anaheim, what's the difference between this year's team and last year's team? Because it seemingly got better in goal.
It got better. It couldn't get much worse. It got better in goal.
Yeah.
I don't know where all those goals went, Tim. It's a great question. I wish he didn't have the answer. No. I don't have the answer.
I don't think Brad Treliving has the answer either.
Well, Brad better find it because he's entered Mark Bergevin territory.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, all I'm saying is the next guy ain't going to be the coach.
Maybe it's just because I don't like Mark Bergevin all that much.
No, I don't like Mark Bergevin. No, but I'm just saying.
When you put it, oh no, that's his coach.
You've played the card.
Yeah, you played.
All right, you've played the card, and I don't know where these guys. Brad's going to hit on. He has to hit on 3 guys this offseason. No fewer than that, because that top line needs a lot of. Sean Monahan has 4 injuries by the end of that season. He taped himself up with duct tape to go out there and help this team try and make a postseason. There was no depth to speak of.
Right.
And he's got to eat it.
We talked about, Brian Burke came in here, we talked about secondary scoring halfway through the year, wondering where that was. Yeah. And that's easy to say. They put a lot of investment in that blue line, and that blue line had to be a little bit better than it was. But I still look at that blue line and say, that's a good blue line. Do you not?
As do I.
Right.
But there's just something has to change.
I just feel with a healthy Matthew Tkachuk, then you might have the second line to go along with that first line, and then you can add 1 or 2 pieces and be a good team once again. So then who then becomes the guy throwing the sticks at the Saddle Dome? If it's not Glen Gulutzan, because there have been some names bandied about. I know that Eric Francis went to Bill Peters. And a lot of people have gone to Bill Peters. I don't know how it became a Bill Peters sweepstakes. I didn't think Carolina did all that well.
Big market for Bill Peters.
I understand why he's out there. Dave Tippett has a bit of experience working with the general manager.
He doesn't throw sticks. I don't want him in Calgary.
Alain Vigneault is out there. That's an interesting one with a team that you suggested is offensively challenged, because he has had some pretty good offensive teams. And before you snicker at Daryl Sutter, I have heard the name before today. Before that went up on that board, and there are those in Calgary snickering, I have heard the name Daryl Sutter thrown out there before.
Well, I mean, based on what we heard today from Brad Treliving,
inside the game.
He's not bringing in a new guy.
Yeah.
He is bringing in a guy who's been in the league and knows a thing or two about it. Mm-hmm. And Daryl Sutter checks a lot of boxes. Not only does he know the league, he knows the market pretty well. Mm-hmm. So I could see that happening. Is that the right thing? Look, here's my point today. I'm with you, Tim. I'm not shocked this happened. I'm a little surprised. I'm not shocked this happened. But I don't care who you put behind that bench. If you have one line going half the season, mm-hmm. and if Tkachuk is gone, which is a major reason I think why they folded as well.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a spark plug, right? I don't know what's going to change. And it's down to Brad. Brad's got to hit on these really well in the offseason at low cost because he's paying Backlund 5, Brouwer's getting 4. There's some bigger ticket guys on the team, and it's those type of plays that are going to change things and get you out of the bottom 5 in both power play and goals scored overall.
It's funny because I just had a conversation with Dwayne Casey about the continuity in Toronto and how that helped the Toronto Raptors. The next guy will be the 4th head coach in 8 seasons in Calgary. And that's not the continuity you look for. But if you're Brad Treliving, you have to have a guy that you can trust and a guy that you believe can make the team better. And maybe he already has that guy, and maybe that's why this moved the way it moved in Calgary.
Maybe. I'm a fan of Glenn. Best of luck to you, brother.
Yeah, me too.
Land on your feet, man.
Yeah.
Never stop throwing those sticks.